All right, hey quants. I started off today without my microphone just for a split second. So luckily I didn't go too far before I realized that I didn't have my microphone in front of my face. I'm starting to get the feeling that I'm naked if I don't have the microphone in front of my face when I'm doing a video, which is hopefully good just in terms of saving time. So speaking of time, let's take a look at some of the Gann timing tool stuff that I've built over at Quant Alchemy recently. So there's no seasonal dates. I don't think that's a big deal. I think that's probably obvious to most people that are looking for seasonal dates right now, but there are an upcoming monthly pressure point dates, which is on the 19th and also on the 20th, between the 19th and 20th for those pressure dates. And so interestingly, those dates, let me make sure I'm getting the right screen showing here. So looking at the economic calendar and trading view, we do have the FOMC meeting or minutes coming up on the 20th. So those could just coincide with each other, which might just create a little bit of confluence for that. And I jumped over to the wrong screen. So let me get back to where I was. Trying to remember these hotkeys so I can jump around quickly. But I just switched my tabs around, so I ended up hitting the wrong button. So anyways, going back to Bitcoin here, I did mention the potential for seeing that third drive of bearish divergence. It doesn't look like this indicator's picking it up. I'm not really doing the work here to see if this is actually higher or lower technically than this last one. It looks like, what do we got here? 1645. And yeah, I mean, it's technically just a little bit under. So, I mean, I think you could argue that that was, if you're using closes, I believe you could have argued that that was a third drive of bearish divergence, and it has continued to play towards the downside. If price closes around where it's at today, we're going to get that 821 cross, which is going to be the bearish signal. And so, one thing I'll mention, and this is just one of the things you're going to deal with if you're doing trending strategies. You could get some. This is why in this case I have the fast moving averages, the 8 and the 21, and also the macro level moving averages, which are the much slower moving averages, which is the 200 SMA and EMA. And so right now, if you're looking at price, it looks like it could still just be retesting. Last time we kind of got a retest down there, and then we bumped up to the 200s. Obviously, who knows what's gonna happen in the markets. It could just continue going south, which would align with the sell in May, go away narrative that we see. However, I will note the oscillators could go lower for sure, but they are already pretty low. So it's kind of 50-50 on that side of the fence. With that said, I would just give it to the momentum, which is currently to the downside. However, if you're doing, you could do a bounce play off of what was previously this kind of box here, and you could also draw this as an ascending triangle like I did here, maybe using this line, skipping some of it. That obviously is a little bit fudged version, but even if you're using wicks, you could call this an ascending triangle, and it looks like it's just testing the top of that. So I mentioned this before. I think when we were around here on the towards the end of April, you could play that as a potential retest here, and then you have some managed risk with fairly tight risk. If it drops back into this area, this box of support, then it'll start looking more like just a box, and it's going to look like a box if you're just using opens and closes versus the wicks anyways. I mean, yeah, you could do it both ways. So with that said, going back to some of the timing things, some things that if you have been following along with the news briefs that are on Quant Alchemy, I won't go and show the link there, but if you go to quantalchemy.io, you will be able to look at the briefs. Those come out daily. If you want to subscribe to them and just get them in your inbox, it's a lot. I understand to be able to get a newsletter like that every single day in your email. I personally don't like a lot of spam. I've signed up to the newsletter more of a testing aspect, and I read them every day before I send them out. But if you guys are finding some value in that, or you like them, but you feel like it's just too much, feel free to post a comment here, and I can consider doing like maybe a weekly summary or a macro, it's not a macro in the sense of macroeconomics, but just longer time frame when I send out that email maybe every week, or as opposed to every single day. and that might be a little bit better for individuals getting that type of information. So probably wouldn't be too much work to get a weekly summary on top of the daily summaries that I'm doing already. So let's so going back to the timing aspect here, what I wanted to, if you've been following my point about mentioning the news briefs, and if you've been following along with those, a lot of the stuff in there talks about some of the Gann strategies, and of course a lot of that revolves around different timing using squares and things like that. One of the points that came up I thought was interesting and fairly relevant at the time was using your counts. So picking a particular count, there are multiple different versions of the count that you can use, and then just counting forwards or backwards to see if anything lines up. So what I thought might be kind of interesting to do just real quick, since I didn't do this, I want to take a look, and I'm going to do this a couple of different ways. Again, I do the news briefs for myself as well, to try and get myself more familiar with some of the Gann stuff. Of course, I don't think that's going to make you an expert in everything, but it does give you some breadcrumbs on things you might want to reach out and maybe use AI or find a book and just try to go a little bit farther on what you're learning or the information that you're getting there. So I find that fairly useful. If I find something that's interesting and I want to dig into it a little bit more, I can do that. So anyways, back on the time aspect here, what I was mentioning about that is I kind of wanted to take a look at the time here and see where we got. So I'm going to take, since this was the last major low that we had, wick low, I just want to take a look and see some of where the highs were and see where they line up. And I'm just going to use the bar count. I'm on the daily time frame. And so 39, I'm just curious if it's around a number. And so 39, I'm not seeing that here. What about this previous top before that? So that was around 26. If it was 21, I'd be looking at that. Maybe 28. Usually you don't see that number, but it is a multiple of 7. So that potentially could be considered interesting, I guess, although I've never seen that in Gann. I'm just applying my own context here while I'm thinking this through. 88 bars. Oh, this is actually pretty interesting. So I was mentioning this one, and this is very close to 90. And so oftentimes you'll see 30, 60, 90, 120 type of multiples in the counts. And so it's pretty interesting that previous high that we had from the low to the high, and I'm using the lowest low that we had to the highest high recently, was 88 bars, and so that was just shy of 90, which I find fairly interesting. If we count forward, we'll see this put in a lower high in terms of the Gann swing indicator. It did close higher, but the wick did not go higher, and this is at 93 bars. Obviously, we're relatively close here. So what I would say in that context, since we're seeing the price pull back, I mean, we could continue to see the price move down farther or see further continuation based on that. And this, of course, is counter to what I was just saying about the potential for seeing a bounce play on what potentially could be considered the breakout portion of an ascending triangle here. And so you have I guess what I'd say there is you have two potential plays there in different directions that you could look at. Obviously, we've kind of missed this one, but we are potentially going to get the 821 close, and so you could use that as a signal. We're a little bit too late for the Gann swing indicator entries. You would have wanted to catch this when you broke if you're playing the 2-bar here. It looks like they had a 1-bar breakdown here, and then there is another one down here. But by the time we get down here, we're also, going to be coming up across this potential diagonal support, and so you might be counter trend trading a test of a diagonal support. I don't put a ton of weight in diagonal supports. I'm just pointing it out. So those are interesting. So anyways, let's the other point that I wanted to track here, and so I took that one from the lowest low that we had all the way up to the current highest high that we've had. And so we did find, just doing that it was very close to 80, and so this definitely could have been considered an actionable entry. And if you wanted to couple that with some swing trading, what you could have done was take a look at this and looking for some action to occur. If you are waiting currently at this point, your closest 2-bar entry would have been a fair ways away. And so, however, if you would have just been swing trading or more aware of your swing trading at that point, this gave you a really nice entry or point of exit or potential entry for a short when it put in a lower high on the swing indicator and then broke through here. And so this would have, would have been a fairly decent point if you would have been also applying the counts on top of that. And so the other area that I want to look at just to see if there's any potential confluence here is I want to grab this low. So I did mention that was from the lowest low. If I was just looking at the most recent run, it really looks like we've gone from here all the way up to here. And so I'm just, and so this was on basically the end of March, 29th of March. If we grab that and then we pull forward for the bars here, this was at 38 bars, so nothing super close there. I did mention we have the like 21, 30, 60, 90. I was doing the 30s, right? So 30, 60, 90s, and we landed at 90 here. This one doesn't really look like it landed on any of them. 45, I believe, you can have like multiples of 15, I believe, as well. And so this one looks like 45 would have been relatively close if you would have been tracking there. And so again, that also aligned with the, giving you, if you were doing the swing trading, you would have been after this low, which would have been a much nicer low or more comfortable, closer low. I won't say more comfortable, but just a closer low to where the price action already was. So anyways, moving forward, we'll just watch and see if this bounces here and if we continue to get this movement off of this ascending triangle breakout. If you want to look at it as an ascending triangle, I kind of like that view right now. But if it just drops through, then you might want to be going back to the idea that this is just a range and it's just falling back into the range. So we'll continue to track that moving forward and see how that plays out. That's going to be it for today on this one, and we will catch you on the next one. Peace, Quants.